Dear learners, I would like to welcome you all to this lecture on agricultural economics. So this lecture is basically a part of our module 11, that is public distribution system. So as I have already explained in my previous lecture, that public distribution system is a system which is designed by the government to provide essential commodities to the needy people. So if you see the evolution of public distribution system, in India it was started during the Second World War and it still continued. But during the course of time, it keeps on changing as per the requirement of the scheme. What happened initially when, if you see the trend of public distribution system after independence, it was basically subsidized kind of food items, distributed to almost all people irrespective of their economic status. So that is why the Indian public distribution system was criticized that irrespective of economic status, goods are distributed to all people or citizens of India. So that is why it is considered to be to some extent regressive, because all people, whether they are rich or poor, they will get benefit from public distribution system. That is, they will get benefit of subsidized food items. So that is why a new concept was introduced, which is basically known as public distribution system. So in this lecture, basically, which is included as a unit 2 of our module 11, that is targeted public distribution system, which is popularly known as TPDS. Here we will discuss what is the need of introducing targeted public distribution system for distribution of public subsidized commodities to the needy people. Now, the targeted public distribution system is basically targeted to the needy people. So that is why it is one of the India's most significant social welfare program designed to ensure food security for millions of vulnerable households. So if you see, after independence, when economic planning was adopted to bring growth as well as development, now economic planning sets lots of objectives. So one of the objective is to, one of the main purpose of economic planning is to, to provide welfare measures to the masses, so that the poor people who are living below the poverty line, they can get, or they should have access of those essential commodities. So that is why, as a part of welfare scheme of the government, the targeted public distribution system was introduced in 1997, that is why the targeted public distribution system, it replaced the earlier public distribution system, so that it better target beneficiaries and reduce leakages. Otherwise, what happened? So when the public distribution system was replaced by TPDS in 1997, it basically served two purposes. One, to target the actual beneficiaries. The purpose of public distribution system is to ensure the supply of basic necessity commodities to the section which is the most neediest section of the masses. So that is why targeted public distribution system is considered to be comparatively better system as compared to public distribution system, because it can target the beneficiaries in a better way, and as well as it also helps to reduce leakages, because otherwise, if there is lots of leakages, the welfare impact of any kind of government scheme is gradually decreases. So that is why it is need to reduce the leakages, and targeted public distribution system is considered to be one of the important public distribution system which has the capability to reduce leakages, so that more and more benefit can be provided to the people. So that is why the program aims to provide subsidized food grains, for example rice, wheat or sugar, to economically disadvantaged section of the society. So as a result, if you see the book or literature, it is considered to be one of the cornerstone of India's effort to combat hunger, malnutrition and poverty. Because these are the, if you see the condition of India, India is considered to be underdeveloped country, having a significant portion of the people are suffering from hunger. And as a result, since they are suffering from hunger, they are not able to get the minimum nutrient in terms of micro and macronutrients. So that is why they are suffering from malnutrition. And along with that, the hunger and malnutrition is basically, due to their level of poverty. Since their income level is quite low as comparative basis, and they are suffering from both absolute and relative poverty, that is why they don't have that amount of purchasing power which can allows them to purchase the different commodities needed for a good and healthy life. So that is why there is a need to have some kind of system on the part of the government, and as a welfare state, it is a duty of the government to provide those goods under some scheme, and targeted public distribution scheme is one of them. Now, if you see, when government want to design a certain kind of scheme, that scheme has to, since India is a huge country, at present India is the most populated country in the world. So that is why, to provide some kind of goods to the masses, to provide some kind of goods to the citizens, the government of India has to develop a vast network. Now, how they develop this vast network? The targeted public distribution system, that is why it operates through a vast network of fair price shop, which is also known as ration shop, which are managed by state government. So it is a part of the state government to manage those fair price shop, through which the subsidized goods are supplied to the needy people. Now, the targeted public distribution system, since India is a federal country with distribution of expenditure as well as revenue responsibilities both the central and the state government. So that is why this program is also jointly administered by the central as well as the state government. Whether with the former, that is the central government is responsible for procurement of those goods from the farmers, and allocation as well as storage, and later for distribution and monitoring. So we have to remember that the function of the central government is to at first procure those goods, then store those goods, and then allocate those goods to the different states and union territories based upon the number of population. And later, the function of the state government is to distribute as well as to monitoring the distribution, so that they can reduce the leakages and more benefits can be attained by the citizen. Now, if you see the literature, so what are the objectives of TPDS? Now, the primary objectives of TPDS are, first and foremost, is the food security. Because without having sufficient and nutritious food, it is not possible for citizens to live a good and healthy life. So that is why food security is considered to be one of the main objectives of targeted public distribution system. Now, what food security ensure? Food security ensure the access to affordable food grains for all citizens, particularly for economically vulnerable population. The second most important objectives of TPDS is the poverty alleviation. Now, if you see, as I have already explained, if you see the people in India, and irrespective of all states, although there are some differences between the states in terms of economic status, but the thing is that people in all states, they are suffering both from absolute and relative poverty. Now, to reduce hunger, which is basically comes out of poverty, and as well as malnutrition, because along with sufficient food, there is a need to have balanced food, which contains both macro and micronutrient, which will help them to fight different kind of diseases. So that is why there is a need to reduce the level of poverty. And that is why poverty alleviation is considered to be one of the important objectives of TPDS. So it reduces hunger and malnutrition by providing subsidized food grains to below poverty line household. Another important objectives of targeted public distribution system is the price stabilization. There is a need to stabilize the prices, because if prices are flexible, it is very difficult for people, particularly the wage earners and salaried people. Because if you see the wage earners and salaried people, their income level is always fixed. So that is why if there is a sudden increase in the prices of particularly essential commodities, it is very difficult for those section of the people to adjust their income. And as a result, what happens? Even if they are getting the same amount of income, their purchasing power will decrease. So which will allows them to purchase the less amount of good by spending the same amount of money. So that is why there is a need to stabilize the prices. And objectives of TPD, one of the important objectives of TPDS is to stabilize the food prices in the market by distributing food grains at control rate. So how they can do that? What they will do, by TPDS, what the government do, they reduce the prices of the commodities artificially by providing some amount of subsidies. Another important objectives of targeted public distribution system is the social welfare. Now, as I have already explained, being a welfare state, it is the responsibility of the government to provide different social security features. And TPDS is considered to be, or it acts as a safety net, particularly for marginalized communities, including tribal population, destitute families, and women. So basically what happens, if you see the classification of people in India, some of the section of people are always considered to be marginalized in terms of amount of income, in terms of access to health facilities, in terms of access to education facilities, in terms of access to nutritious food. So that is why there is a need to provide some kind of assistance to those people, such as I have already explained, tribal population, destitute families, and women. So that is why providing social welfare is another important objectives of targeted public distribution system. Now, when we are talking about targeted public distribution system, it is necessary to discuss what is each component. Since India is a huge country having a highest population in the world, that is why we need to develop some kind of multi-layered system with dividing the responsibilities to different tier of government. So as a result, TPDS is a targeted or public distribution system is a multi-layered system with several key components. Now, what are those key components? Now, the main task of the TPDS is to identification of the beneficiaries, which is considered to be one of the important tasks. Because if there is some fault in the identification of the beneficiaries, what will happen? So, goods will be supplied to those people which are not, basically, which are considered to be comparatively rich at the expense of the poor people. So that is why identification of the beneficiaries is considered to be one of the important objectives of, and that is why TPDS categorizes household into three groups based on their economic status. Now, what is the first group? That is Antodaya Anna Yojana, AAY category. So this category is basically considered to be the poorest of the poor, such as destitute household, tribal families, marginalized group. So that is why they need the assistance. Since they are the poorest of the poor, the amount of assistance required for them is comparatively high as compared to other category. So this is since this is the poorest of the poor category, so that is why the amount of intervention, but amount of commodities needed for them for their survival or for their improving their economic status is comparatively higher as compared to other categories. So consider that fact, AAY category, that is Antodaya Anna Yojana category, are entitled to 35 kg of food grains per household per month at highly subsidized rate. Now, the second important category of targeted public distribution system is the priority household. So what are the priority household? Their condition is comparatively better than Annadaya Anna Yojana. They are not considered to be the poorest of the poor, although they are considered as poor category, or you can say priority household. So these are the family, they are also living below the poverty line, but their condition is comparatively better than AAY category, and as a result, each priority household is entitled to 5 kg of food grains per person per month. So next important category is the non-priority household. So these are the families which are above the poverty line, and that is why they are not eligible for getting free food. They are not eligible for those facilities which are basically enjoyed by Annadaya Anna Yojana, our priority household. So those families which are above the poverty line, they are eligible for limited benefits at comparatively higher prices. So that is why if you see the key component of targeted public distribution system, there are 3: Annadaya Anna Yojana, priority household, and non-priority household. Now next we'll discuss about the food gain allocation. So what the government basically do, the central government allocate food grains to the states and union territories based on their population and poverty level. So higher the population, higher the amount of food grains allocated to different states. So this is obvious. But along with the population, what the government of India consider is the poverty level. Because if you see, India is a diversified country. If you see the level of income or the per capita income, the extent of poverty in different states is quite diversified. If you see some of the states, their per capita income is quite high, such as Goa, Punjab. But if you consider some of the states, particularly the northeastern states, or states like Bihar, UP, their per capita income is comparatively low, and as a result, the living below the poverty line, people living below the poverty line also comparatively low. So that is why the allocation of food grains to the different states and union territories are based on their population and poverty level. Now, if you see the data of 2022-23, the subsidized rates are, rice is provided rupees 3 per kg. It keeps on changing. What the rate I quoted is the which was prevailed in 2020-23. That is rice rupees 3 per kg, wheat rupees 2 per kg, and cross grains rupees 1 per kg. Now, whenever we are talking about targeted public distribution system, there's we need to discuss about allocation of or distribution of those subsidized food. Now, how can you allocate those subsidized food? That is basically through fair price shops. Now, what is fair price shop, which is also known as ration shop? This is basically this is the last meal delivery points where beneficiaries can purchase their allocated food grains. So there are, if you see in case of India, there are over 5 lakh fair price shop operating across India. In fact, it is more than 5 lakh and managed by state government, cooperative and private entities. Now, if you see what is the role of central and state government in case of distribution of subsidized food, the responsibilities are specific. In case of central government, they are responsible for procurement, procured from different farmers. Then they have to store those commodities because most of the food grains are perishable in nature. So there is need to store those goods in some kind of warehouses where those can be stored without having any destruction or whatever it may be. Next, there is a need to allocation of food grains. There is a need to allocation of food grains based on the amount of people and level of poverty. So these are basically function of the central government, that is procurement, storage and allocation of food grains. Now, what are the function of the state government? State government is basically responsible for identification of the beneficiaries. After identification of the beneficiaries, what they will do, they will distribute those commodities based on allocation from the central government. And next, along with that, there another important function on the part of the state government is to monitoring of the fair price shop. They have to very much aware of the fact that there is a possibility that there are some leakages in the distribution of food grains. So it is a responsibility of the state government to monitor the distribution of food grains to different fair price shops. Now, since we have discussed about the functions of both the central and the state government, now we are in a position to discuss the functioning of the TPDS in India. As I have already explained, the TPDS operate through a well-defined process. There is one is the procurement. The government procure food grains from farmers as minimum support price, which is known as MSP, through agencies like Food Corporation of India. So what Food Corporation of India basically do, they on behalf of central government purchase the food grains from the farmers at minimum support price. Next function is to allocation. The food grains are allocated to the states as well as union territories based on their two criteria, as I have already explained, population and poverty level. Now after allocation, here comes the function of the state government. What does state government basically do? State government distribute food grains to beneficiaries through fair price shops. The fair price shops are responsible for distributing the food grains to the needy people. Now last is the monitoring. This is a part of the state government. This system is monitored at both the central and state level, basically by state level, to ensure transparency as well as efficiency. Now, any kind of public welfare program has to face challenges in terms of implementation, basically in terms of implementation. Because despite of his noble objectives, the TPDS also faces several challenges. The one most important challenge is the leakages and corruption. This is very much prevalent in India. So corruption ultimately lead to certain different kind of leakages. Because diversion of food grains to the open market remains a significant issue, with which estimate suggesting that up to 40% of the food grains do not reach the intended beneficiaries. This was a huge leakage on the part of the system. So there is a need to reduce the leakages by reducing the corruption or better targeting the beneficiaries. Another important issue or challenge of targeted public distribution system is the identification error. That is, error related to inclusion of not deserving families and exclusion of deserving families. So both inclusion and exclusion errors in identifying below poverty line household lead to deserving families being left out and ineligible families receiving benefit. So identification error is considered to be one of the significant error or challenges of targeted public distribution system. Another important challenge of targeted public distribution system is the inefficient supply chain. Now, without having an efficient supply chain, it is not possible for the government or administration to supply those commodities to the needy people. So that is why there is a need to have a robust supply chain, because delays in transportation and delays in storage or lack of storage lead to spoil of food grains, reducing the overall efficiency of the system. But in spite of effort by both the central and state government, inefficient supply chain still remains as a big challenge for targeted public distribution system. Another important challenge of targeted public distribution system is the lack of transparency. Because limited use of technology in the early years leads to mismanagement and corruption. There is a need to, because this is basically a public scheme which is basically funded by revenue earned by the government through different kinds of taxes and non-taxes. So there is a need to have transparency or 100% transparency on the part of the central and state government, which is not basically happening, and as a result it lead to mismanagement and corruption. Another important challenge or issue of targeted public distribution system is the awareness issue, because many beneficiaries are unaware of their entitlement. Because when if you see the people in India, they are suffering not only from poverty, they are also suffering from lack of education. So when people have lack of education, obviously there is a possibility that they are unaware of their entitlement, and as a result leading to underutilization of the system. They are not aware that how much amount of food grains they should get. So that is why awareness issue is considered to be one of the important challenge of targeted public distribution system. And another important system is to reform and technological intervention. Although during the course or during the evolution of the system or over the time, lots of technological intervention are introduced, but still there is a need to have more reforms and technological intervention for efficient targeted public distribution system. Now, since challenges are there, and it is obvious that when government introduce any kind of system, obviously it will suffer from different challenges. Now the problem is that we need to address those challenges. Now in this section we will discuss what are the steps taken by the government, what are the steps it should take in. It should adopt it or introduce in terms of reform and technological intervention, so that it can at least reduce the impact of those challenges. So one such intervention, or you can say measures on the part of the government, is the Aadhaar link ration card. So what government is trying to do? Government is trying to link the Aadhaar card along with the ration card. So linking of ration card with Aadhaar card has helped government to reduce duplication and as well as to ensure accurate identification of the beneficiaries. Another important intervention of the part of the government is the digitization of fair price shop. So automation of or digitization of fair price shop operation has improved transparency and reduced corruption. Many states have implemented electronic point of sale devices. They have implemented electronic point of sale devices to track transaction. This is another important intervention or steps on the part of the government to reduce the leakages in the targeted public distribution system. Another important measures on the part of the government is the direct benefit transfers. Now if you see, there is if you see the financial inclusion in recent years, there is a sudden jump in the financial inclusion, and as a result, if each and most of the citizens in India, they have accounts in their bank. So what government is trying to do, in some states, the cash transfers are made directly to the beneficiary's bank account instead of distributing food grains. So as a result, it reduces leakages and gives beneficiaries the flexibility to purchase food grains from the open market. Now, another important intervention or steps on the part of the government is the One Nation, One Ration card. So this scheme is basically launched in 2020, but it's still it's still in the implementation stage. But it is a good initiative on the part of the government that allows beneficiaries to access their entitlement from any fair price shop across the country. So this is particularly beneficial particularly for migrant workers who move between states for work. Otherwise, what happened? Targeted public distribution system, basically those beneficiaries, they can purchase their subsidized food from a particular fair price shop. So if flexibility is given to them, what they can do, they can migrate from one state to another state, and by showing their card, they can purchase those commodities from any fair price shop across the country. Another important intervention on the part of the government to reduce the leakages is the integrated management of public distribution system, which is basically known as IMPDS. So IMPDS, or Integrated Management of Public Distribution System, is a centralized online platform for monitoring and managing targeted public distribution system operation. It provides real-time data on food grain allocation, distribution and utilization. Now, since we are discussing about targeted public distribution system, it is always necessary to discuss about impact, how it impacted on the general people. Now, targeted public distribution has significant impact on food security and poverty alleviation in India. Now, what are the positive impact? The first positive impact is to reduce hunger and malnutrition. So, targeted public distribution system has helped to reduce hunger and malnutrition substantially among the vulnerable population, particularly in rural area. But along with that, we need to mention that still there is a need to do more. It also, another important impact of targeted public distribution system is to some extent it helps to stabilize the food prices. By distributing the food grains at control rates, the targeted public distribution help to stabilize the food price in the market. Safety net during crisis also another considered to be important or positive impact of targeted public distribution system. So if you see the situation of COVID-19 and other situation where there is a lack of food grains, so in those situations, targeted public distribution played a crucial role, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, providing free food grains to vulnerable households under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Now, although it has a positive impact, there is a need to improve. There is a scope for improvement. The one such area is the better targeting. There is a need to improve the identification of beneficiaries to ensure that benefits reach to the most vulnerable section of the people. So better targeting is that although government is trying to target the poor people, but still there is a scope for improve in that particular parameter, so that more only the targeted group or only the neediest people will get the benefit out of it. Strengthening of the supply chain, another important, this is in fact considered to be one of the important challenge or area for improvement on the part of the government, because reducing delays and leakages in the supply chain can improve overall efficiency of the system. Again, there is a need to have more awareness campaign. Increasing awareness among the beneficiaries about their entitlement can lead to better utilization of the system. Now, if you see the recent development in the targeted public distribution system, is we can mention three. One I have already mentioned, that is one nation and one ration card, which I will not explain in detail. Another important development is National Food Security Act, which was implemented in 2013. This is basically the National Food Security Act. It expanded the coverage of targeted public distribution system to include 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population. And it also introduced a legal entitlement to food grains, making the targeted public distribution system a right-based approach or right-based program. Now, it is considered as a right of the vulnerable people to get those subsidized food at subsidized rate. So that is why National Food Security Act provide that right to the needy people, and which is considered to be to some extent a recent development. And another development which I have already explained, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. So this is basically introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The government provided free food grains under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana to support vulnerable households. So this initiative was widely praised for its effectiveness in addressing food insecurity during the crisis. So thus, in conclusion, what we can say, the targeted public distribution system is a cornerstone of India's effort to achieve food securities and eradicate hunger. So while it has made significant stride or significant progress, there is still room for improvement in terms of efficiency, transparency and inclusivity. So, with continued reform and technological advancement, the targeted public distribution can better serve its purpose and ensure that no Indian goes to bed hungry. Thank you.